Hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back, Adam. Yeah, and while you're connecting, I will just remind the participants the topic of your next talk. It will be web apps productivity without the frameworks. I'm glad to invite you to your second talk, so the mic is yours, please. You're welcome to start.
Okay, thank you. So second session, complete different topic. Let's talk about web. And the idea is to show you what happens if you just, ignore all the frameworks and focus on productivity. Okay, whatever I will do, I will check it into the Hex repository again. So the example from the previous show is already checked in 27 minutes ago. And this is GitHub Adam Bean Airhacks. But if you like to have the samples, clone them after the shows, because I will, I don't know, after the weekend probably deleted everything here. And these are the links regarding this session, native web platform. Okay, now I really like Java still and JavaScript. And actually, funny fact, I started with web at the same time as Java, but back then it was not very. JavaScript was not fashionable. It was actually somehow, disadvantageous to talk about, JavaScript, because everyone assumed you are not a programmer. And this changed a little bit. Now, I write a blog from time to time. I also deliver workshops a few times a year, online workshops right now. And there are also pre-recorded video courses if you're interested. Okay, and this is the online workshops at Munich Airport. I wanted to say online because of current situation. No workshops at Munich Airport, and probably the microphone that is most similar to this session. So now these are the slides from the SAP keynote, and this is 2019 already. Is 1 year ago, and what SAP actually said. The gist of the keynote was they delivering less and less frameworks because the web platform becomes more and more powerful. What I do in my commercial work, I'm working as a developer, consultant, architect, and I get lots of questions from various clients, what they should do in the front end. So in the back end, it's already actually what you do in the back end. You saw in my previous session, we actually using the same boring APIs we use now for 20 years and ship them on modern runtimes. In the front end, it's not as easy because we could use, JSF, servlets, whatever, or we can have SPAs in the browser. The question is what to choose. And what SAP did here, it's say, okay, we actually 2019 we only focus on core business functionality and not, on the entire stack, because we use more and more open source technology or open source browser APIs, native functionality, like web components, CSS variables, and stuff like that. So in my opinion, what happens is, this is what I believe, and this is, I think, the trend, that frameworks become less and less required, is more an option and not a requirement. And if you like a framework, you can use it, but it's not like without a framework, you're not productive. This is a difference to prior to 2015. So this is true from 2015. Whatever I show you today, you should work in all major browsers without any polyfills or transpilation or whatever. And and because this is true, so what it mean, if this is true over time, in one point of time, you won't need frameworks at all, infrastructural frameworks. You will only pick a framework if you need additional business functionality, like, for instance, you would like to have, I don't know, specific, 3D functionality, charting, or stuff like that. So, okay, now, so what the agenda is going to be, learning curve. Talk about that, because I hear a lot. We need, Angular or whatever, because otherwise it's going to be too hard. We will talk about ES6, is 2015, JavaScript 2015, and we also will talk about ES modules, web components, about data binding, how to implement data binding, and SPAs, PWAs, and micro frontends. So this is what we are going to do. And so as teaser, this is actually a recent event. It was this summer, exactly. This is June 6th. So SpaceX revealed that they actually on the dashboards in the rocket were built with web components. There was one funny comment, like someone said, okay, why they are not using established frameworks? And they say the SpaceX developer says, None of that is not established. In fact, it's the opposite. Web components are built into the browser. JavaScript, CSS, and HTML are as well. So, and this is also what I advise to my clients to say, look, if you just focus on the web platform, native web platform, it will never disappear. It will remain mainly compatible. But if you would deliver more the focus on frameworks, chances are very high that the framework will disappear at one point of time, or you will have constantly chased the framework. Okay, so and if you have any questions left, go to EHEX.TV, and this was the last slide. So it was not entirely slideless, but I would say almost slideless. And first, events. So for instance, if we go to my blog and search for here, so Devoxx Ukraine, so this announcement was created with an SPA. And this SPA is part of the course I created. It's just a branch because it comes with my branding, CSS, I mean, from my blog. This is what I meant by branding. What I do, because I'm too lazy, this is actually my tool I use a lot. I start a browser sync, and you can see this is the announcement from Devoxx Ukraine with the table, and I can click on preview, and it renders actually the blog entry. I click a copy, and I can copy to my blog, and it works. So the interesting part is this is actually offline app because all the JSON is stored in a local storage, and this is written exactly how I will write it today with the same ideas and technologies without any external framework except one SAP UI5 web component, because it's nice and functional. But I could also get rid of that. I just don't use it at all. And it just works without any npm even installed. It's a simple app as it was 15 years ago. And this is highly productive. And in some projects, I spend my time right now in some huge projects, and they started with framework, but they didn't manage to deliver because it was too complex. Start without, and they are really happy because now they see at least the light, what exactly to do to deliver the complex functionality. Okay, so my opinion is a little bit opposite. It's not like for simple stuff you don't use a framework. You can just go with web standards. I would say for simple stuff you can actually use a framework because it doesn't matter. But the more complex your application gets, the faster you become just learning the basics, basically. And this is also my opinion. You will need to learn JavaScript anyway. So the question is, why not start to know what the web platform brings, and then think about whether a framework is appropriate or not. This is my thinking. Okay, now let's start with a simple project, set up web standard project, and now call it, of course, Devoxx UA. So, and what happened? It opened a browser with, Visual Studio Code, and this is usually what you need. And I will just rearrange that. And this is what I use a lot, not only on conferences, also as particular in my projects. And what the browser sync does, I mean, this is the only thing you will need. It's just, this is actually the invocation. And by the way, I will just, whatever I will do, I will commit. And what I also would like to do is to add it to the show notes. So you have everything. So this was the only thing, the magical thing. And this was here. So I will just add it. So this is the invocation. And what the invocation means is start the browser from source and use the source as a context root, launch Google Chrome, and please don't send me any notifications. So this is the entire setup you need to start with web components. Okay, because of time, let's do it a little bit faster. So what I would like to do is instead of doing the script, I would just activate the modules. And this works with type module. So now what happens is the native modules in browser are activated. This was now a few years ago. We had to use Browserify, which was like a required JS in the browser. You don't need it anymore. You can just go with straight modules. They are available everywhere. And then let's create a simple component. And this is class Devoxx dev UI shorter, and extends HTML element, not embedded element. custom elements, define the frequent question is dev UI and dev UI. Frequent question is where to learn about these things here, and the answer is easy. So first, if you search for MDN HTML element, you get the right answer. MDN is Mozilla Developer Network, and this is like consortium of different companies which agree that this is the canonical resource for web native standards. And so because this is not very convenient, there's also tools like Devoxx. I was confused with Devoxx. Devoxx.io, and I can search here for HTML element as well. And the nice thing is, this is the answer from the cache basically. This tool is offline capable, so you get the information directly from browser, and you can be offline. So as we had to travel, and if I had to work in an airplane or train with no shaky internet connection, I used Devoxx, and everything what I needed was there. This is a nice thing, and it was my feedback from the Java developers. They really appreciate that because it's very similar to JavaDoc actually. So now connected callback is very much like post construct in Java, and what I would like to do is to integrate with to write a simple markup, and let's say just hello Devoxx UI H2. So have it, and this is then dev UA, I think. Yeah, Devoxx UI. So this was the first simplest possible web component. The question is only, is it enough, or should you just implement the entire app with that? Or what I hear a lot, the granularity of web components is too fine. You cannot develop, entire app with it, which is not true at all. In my projects, the names of the web components are more like navigation, footer, header, content, pagination, whatever. It's like business names, like Java classes. And we also have at the same time finer grained components, like for instance, if you will, auto suggestion or date picker or more sophisticated tables. Okay, this was the first component, and because of that, I would like to say to commit that first web component. Okay, now we have it, and so what's the next step? So first, this is not very secure, and we don't also have, and very slow, because if we had lots of such components, it will re-render the entire browser window over and over again. And for that reason, what I like to do is to use lit HTML. Lit HTML, and this is the reminder of the Polymer project. And I don't use the lit element. I use just the library standalone because it's good enough. And by the way, I will need this in a second. So I show you from scratch what the experience actually is to use that. And what I tend to do is to create outside the application, but because we are now in presentation mode, inside the application, call folder dapps, switch to dapps. I would like to create a git npm project to download the dependencies. You don't have to, but it's usually the easiest way. Usually you will find here somewhere, get started with the npm code. And what I would like to do here as well, to install a modern build tool, which is also optional today, but if you have incompatible libraries, you can use it. It's called Snowpack. And I would like to install Snowpack as a development dependency. Actually, also doesn't matter. And the thing is, in real-world projects, we don't install that on our developer machines. It happens on Jenkins somewhere. And what we're interested in is the output, like just the web components as JavaScript, and we can download that from a URL. So now this Snowpack is installed. Snowpack is just a modern tool which understands imports, ES6 imports, ES modules. Let's go ahead with lit HTML. So I can install lit HTML. I think this is the right. Yeah. So lit HTML is installed, and how to find that, because we should see here that we have the lit HTML is the only dependency we have, and this is just a helper dependency. Okay, now what I usually do is I create as well here an index.js, and then just say, echo that into index.js. And then we have in the where is my index.js? Here, index.js import HTML render from this. And this is needed or not. It really depends. You can also specify the lit HTML here in the Snowpack. I prefer this because just copy and paste from the website. And why I did it, because, watch this. If I say npx Snowpack, it should recognize it's actually not required at all. There's nothing to install. It is right. It is nothing to install because it was he's right. So what I will do is lit HTML. Wait a second. There's a lit HTML 1.3. This works. Snowpack also works, and our index.js. Let's see whether this was right. This was a typo. Okay, this was a typo. My error, sorry. So we have the lit HTML, which was installed. This was actually also optional because lit HTML comes already with the, as the right format. But if you had a legacy library, you will have to do this. And what happened is we see here one dependency lit HTML, which is one file, which is 1,000, 2,000 lines of code, or 1,500 lines of code with lots of JS docs, and there are the exports. So now I can use the lit HTML. So what is the lit HTML? And the lit HTML, so we can use it right now. So let's use the lit HTML. I will switch to source and copy Devoxx web modules, I think, lit HTML to here. So I just copied it over. Again, usually I could just, so with that, I can just say import statement from lit HTML. And what I'm interested here in is render and HTML. So, and in real world, we just import from an URI, and URI, which from a web server, which belongs to us, or a Nexus or something like that. So now we have it. What's the change? So now I can actually use here HTML, and we see the object because what we get back is a template. So let's say template. And then I can invoke render, which is this function here. And I'm rendering the template into the component. So, so now we have it here, the template in the component, inside the component. So now it's faster, but it's also more secure. So more secure means if you would get some, data from the server and we would try to inject JavaScript, it will be automatically escaped by lit HTML. And it's faster because lit HTML recognizes, because of the bindings, what actually changed, and it just re-renders parts which changed. So this is like high performance without virtual DOM. Okay, now what we get out of that, some syntactic sugar as well. Now I can say I'm interested in receiving the click events, and then I can just invoke here a method like clicked, and then click me. Wow, big button. Clicked. And say here console log clicked. So, and if we open the browser, the console, you see it is working, and with new date, it will also work. So the common question is about what if I would like to call the server. So for that, let's say here we have devs JSON, dev JSON, so it's a Java developer, and the Java developer He's very young, and age is, of course, no more than 20 usually, and name Devoxxian. This is the name. So, okay, now we have it, and how to load the JSON from the web component. So what we can do is the following. We can say here, I would like to do this method is going to be asynchronous. With that trick, I can actually use fetch, which is part of the native platform, and this fetch invokes now dev JSON, and I'm awaiting and resolving the promise, and what I get back is the response. And then I know I'm interested in JSON, so I can call JSON and say await, and this is the payload. And then we are interested in name and age, and we get it from the payload. And then I will try to log it out and say hello name, you are age. So let's see. And cannot destruction name, why not? Dev JSON index app.js await payload, because of this. Hello Devoxx, and you are 20. So this was wrong, and this was visible because this is grayed out. Okay, my fault. So this was the asynchronous backend communication without any dependencies. Of course, you can set headers and you can manipulate whatever. This is the full power behind. And again, if we switch to Devoxx and search for fetch, we get here the fetch API with lots of examples. So in projects, we are sending bearer tokens back and forth, and you can support cores, whatever, right? So it's a pretty powerful API. And the nice thing about web standards is you learn them once and never again because they are there. So this is lit HTML what we are using, and now what happened today morning is I searched for my own presentation web components, and I found something interesting which I would like to share with you. Actually, the very first time I didn't know even that it exists. What turns out is, where is my browser here? What turns out that I already added for you. GitHub also uses web components, and I show you this, and they are actually really useful. So they're called time elements, and what they do is I show you in a second because I would like to use them. So the installation is npm install time elements, so we can absolutely do this. The nice story is they already come with the standard format. So if we just go here and say Devoxx deps, then install the time elements. And then what happens is in the deps folder, node modules, there is a GitHub dist, and whatever you need is already in the right format. This is time elements, and it is like, I don't know, let's see, this is not that long with some exports, and you could just copy it over, or we can do the same trick as before. So I can go to the index.js and let's say I would like to, let's see, what was it? Time elements, this is the last line. I could just for fun say I would like to have everything. So not required at all, just assuming worst possible case, you have a library which is absolutely not compatible. Import from, and this is going to be, what was it, GitHub, I think? GitHub time elements, exactly. So now run the npx snowpack again. and you see the GitHub time elements and lit.html. So both are available. So by the way, it might be a good idea always go with with Snowpack. The reason being is because Snowpack will find commonalities between the libraries and will extract them, like deduplicating, the commonalities between libraries. So we have the GitHub elements, time element, which is really useful, and this is going to be in the web modules folder, and this is GitHub and time elements, but the namespace doesn't really matter. So I will just copy this over here, and we have the time elements here. So what I could do, switch to app.js and just use this here. Of course, I will have to import again. So I will just import this, and this was time elements directly from GitHub, and I will just load that, so it should be enough. So why this is useful? Because if we just do that, and this is just fallback, so just do this, and we add it here and switch. You see on 2nd April. So this doesn't matter. So what it does is it translates the time into something human readable. So that's actually the power of the web. They are really useful. So actually, I can use it right now in my projects. And let's see here, time until time ago, local time might be interesting. So let's go with that. And local time, and you can specify with the attributes what you really mean. And this is the second one. So this was that, and we can say today is the 2020th, and I think something like this. And what we get is November, and what I know is you can also say this is Thursday, so I played with that, or at least not played, but I saw that it can actually translate it to to the literals, Thursday and stuff like that. So I think if you say day, just see what happens. Not a lot, but so this is from GitHub, and this is what you probably see 100 times a day. This is the web components, very new one. So there are components from, and I'll show you some libraries. The most interesting one are this was the time elements from GitHub, fairly new. It's like 4 years was the repo was created, and there's the one in dist folder. There is one component which is the recent one, standard base, and the legacy component which requires additional tooling. Then Devoxx already covered. Browser sync is the nice tool. UI5 web components from SAP. This is where from the keynote. And what's really nice, we already saw the component was the date picker, which I tend to use from SAP or from Vaadin. It's also another framework. There are also ENG Lion web components, and they are also really interesting because they look just black and white because they are not styled. So you can use Lion web components and adapt them to your needs. Then there are nicer looking components with some styling is from Adobe Spectrum web components. And even Salesforce, in Salesforce environment, you can create applications using web components. Apple delivered Apple Music with web components, and actually in all my web projects right now, we use web components without framework. So the question is only, would you like to ship web components in a framework, or whether web components are just enough? So if we build an application in a project, how this would usually look like is you would start with an app. Actually, we can review. The web components. This application, because it is somehow complex application. So if you take a look how it is structured, so we have everything starts with a main, header, status, navigation, and this is the navigation, and then where the navigation happens and the app is loaded. and the app is like, where the router is loaded, and the router comes from Vaadin router is another web component, and it just loads, the application shell. And then we are navigating between preview and a new event, and the preview is one web component. It's called preview. It extends my own element, and what you can do here, you can render different parts, and the new component, the creation new event here is it just creates the form. So the components, web components with lit HTML are very similar to React actually development. This is more how it looks like. And now about data binding. So you see that actually the name of the events that we have the names of the components. They are named, new event. They are named navigation, preview, and status. There are business names. And they can comprise, components like button. This is not a web component, but could be. A larger project right now, we are using Vaadin buttons, for instance, right? Okay, so now we have it. This was the time elements from GitHub, really useful web component suite. And now let's talk about data binding, because I get a question a lot, what about data binding? And what happened here? I forgot to close the string. So the data binding is actually not used that much in projects. I mean, it is. I'll show you what I mean. What you can do, you can say input and then say on key down or key up. This works. Or let's change. Is maybe better. Or key up. So if you do this, I can receive all the events from the input. On change, I will receive the change from the input. So this is needed, but what usually happens, we use something like Redux, and Redux maintains the state in a central place. And what you're only doing is you are modifying, Redux, the state of the Redux, and on every change, the entire component tree is re-rendered. So what means is that you don't. It's not like you are sticking in one view and you need data binding to to synchronize yourself with the state. Rather than on every change, everything is reloaded and refreshed. You would think this is bad for performance, but actually, if you are using lit HTML automatically recognizes what changed and what didn't. So you get very fast performance, because if you would run it in Internet Explorer, you will see parts of the application flashing and say, okay, this was updated and everything remains the same. And we did some tests with huge tables, and it worked fairly well. Okay, this was still a toy application, but at least larger application with business names. So now at the same note, so I could actually include here whatever component you like for instance, SAP UI5 element with date picker. It's the same process. And with SAP UI5, currently you will actually even have to do this, because SAP UI5 don't come with the ES6 or ES5 fully supported standard yet. So what we, of course, can also do, we can introduce our own classes. So the classes are not implemented on behavior. It's not implemented inside the view, inside the component, but it is implemented outside. So usually we have controls, let's say Devoxx control in our toy application, it doesn't matter. And this is usually collection of methods like export, const, and what we can do is actually we have multiple. We can do it here. Hello, and this hello is a function with no parameters and just returns hello world. Hello world. So with that, I can absolutely import this here and say import statement and import from Devoxx control. And this is hello. And then I can just use it here in the click and say with content and here say hello and just invoke that. So let's see. And you can see content hello world, which comes from the component Devoxx control here. So, and how this is organized, usually web components are just the presentation view, and they delegate to plain old JavaScript methods or plain old JavaScript classes. And these classes, actually here, the communication happens with the server, and then they set actions to the Redux store. The state is modified, and then all components are re-rendering themselves. So one thing which is important in larger projects is what could happen is that I will create here H2 Devoxx, hello Devoxx, and then have a style with H2 and say background color is brown. So really nice. And you can see what happens now. I have two H2. So one of the top level and one inside the component. So this might be even good, but what can also happen is that per accident, I could say I'm loading a component from somewhere, and I'm say, okay, style. And the style is H2, the same here. And background, background color is pink. And as you can see, now I'm able, in a component, take an influence on the style of the entire application, which is not desirable because you can load the component, let's say, from SAP, and it will destroy your layout or your look and feel. So what you can do with that is the following. I will just create a constructor, and in JavaScript is just like that. And then you need to use the super. And then I can say, but I can just use a shadow DOM, that shadow. And this is like high performance iframe. So this is what you can think about. And then we can just say, and we need a mode, and the mode is open. This is the standard. Close doesn't make any sense. It's not safer, but yeah, just use open. And now, instead of doing this, I would say this root. And what happens now, you see that the Devoxx UA is pink, but this is brown. So my component, so the layout of my component or CSS for my component cannot escape and influence the entire page. It just, is just local. And what the change here in the browser window is we have a shadow root, and in the shadow root, you can see here, so whatever is inside with the hash is actually private. It cannot escape. And prior to that, there was no shadow root, so there was no private space. So you can very easily escape from the component to outside of the component, right? So this was the difference. Okay, now we have it. So we have here the web components, dev UI with shadow DOM, which means encapsulated area, which we cannot escape. And what you could do, of course, you can define so-called custom properties. And with the custom properties, I can say instead of pink, like Devoxx background color, and then you can actually style from outside all the web components. Okay, so now we created, I think, we included a third-party component. We used lit HTML to improve security and performance from Polymer. We use Snowpack, and the Snowpack is the great tool, which is based on Rollup.js, which also used by Snowpack Dev, exactly. This is this tool we used. This is like, understandable Webpack, I would say. So this is a modern tool which only works best with standards. And Snowpack uses Rollup.js behind the scenes. And all these tools are just marginally needed because you only need them to create from an incompatible JavaScript module something more compatible. Okay, and yeah, I think we are almost over time. So now, any questions?
Thank you, Adam, once again for the talk. Thank you for supporting our event and doing actually 2 talks. So I invite you to join the Q&A Zoom room. You will receive the link right now from our org team. Dear participants, please join the Zoom room with Adam and ask your questions and open the discussion. So I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you once again and hope to see you next year.
Sure. So I will stop this presentation and rejoin to the latest link.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.